Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Maple Leaf Community Council October Candidates and Issues Forum. My name is David Miller. I'm the president of the Maple Leaf Community Council. This is something that we started doing 5 or 6 years ago every October as part of our general meeting in October. We try to hold it the Wednesday that ballots come out, because ballots, believe it or not, already will arrive in your mailboxes, usually for most of us in Maple Leaf, Friday or Saturday. And those ballots, of course, are due on the first Tuesday in November, so make sure you vote and get them in. And then a little tip, if you don't like getting phone calls from campaigns over the next couple of weeks, mail your ballot back early. And that won't prevent those coming in, but it will cut down on the number of phone calls that you get. Of course, something may happen in the last 2 weeks of the race that will make you wish, wow, would I really wish I had voted for somebody else. So phone calls, late information, phone calls, late information, if you guys decide. So, forum rules for tonight are all pretty simple. Each of the speakers will have 3 minutes to talk, and then they'll follow that up with a 1-minute rebuttal. This includes the candidates as well as the campaigns. Sylvia here, raise your hand, Sylvia, has time cards, and you will get counted down 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and then time is up. And then if you keep going after the time is up, then the cowbell will come out to let everybody know that you're going over your time. Then we'll do Q&A from audience members. And we focus on audience members from the Maple Leaf community for that. The answer times for the questions will be 30 to 90 seconds from each of the candidates or each of the people, representatives from the campaign. And I'll let everybody know about how long the answers will be for that. One of the things, the Maple Leaf Community Council, this forum is very well known for the respectful way that we treat candidates. We see too much nonsense in politics this day, people standing up and shouting, and people, talking heads shouting at each other on television, and it's poisoned our political process, and we don't need that here. If you feel like a candidate said something you really liked, go ahead and clap. Don't hiss, don't boo. Be respectful when you ask the questions, and we want to keep this process as respectful as possible, which will also mean that I don't need to raise my voice, and we can get through this evening and exit on time at 9 o'clock, because we have many candidates, many campaigns, and then a fairly large land use update at the very end. And so with that, we will have our first campaign. And that's for King County District Court number 2. The candidates who have agreed to appear tonight are Mark Chow. Oh, I want to say one other thing too before I get to you. We are recording the evening, and we have a YouTube channel. The address for that is at the bottom, and we will try to have this posted up at the end. Yes?
Does that mean if you're not in the Maple Leaf community, you should not ask a question?
Not necessarily, but we know the people who are in the community, so we'll go to them first. You have a question? Are you raising your hand? No. Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. All right, so King County District Court 2, Mark Chow and Philip Tavel. Mark Chow.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. My name is Judge Mark Chow. I'm running for re-election, okay? And it's for the District Court, oh, should I not go around? It's for District Court Position 2, okay? We all look for a judge that is fair, dedicated, and experienced, okay? Where people will get an open and complete hearing, where decisions will be made on the facts and the law. We want a judge that will seek solutions that will improve the system and access to justice for people and the community. I've been your judge for 23 years, and in those 23 years, I presided over hundreds of jury trials and handled cases ranging from DUIs to domestic violence, from contract breaches to landlord-tenant. So I'm committed to continue to be fair and dedicated to protect people's rights and the safety of our community. Now, I don't have much time, but I do want to go over some of the people who have endorsed and supported me. That way you have an idea of who I am and who people who know me support me. It's over 140 plus judges, 8 Supreme Court justices that are sitting, 7 Division I Court of Appeals, our Mayor Murray, our County Executive Dow Constantine, the Democratic legislative districts of 11th, the 32nd, the 34th, the 36th, the 37th, the 43rd, and your 46th. I've been endorsed by the King County Democrats, the AFL-CIO Central Labor Council, City Council members, King County Council members, state representatives, state senators. I've been rated by the King County Bar as well qualified, the Lauren Miller Bar as exceptionally well qualified, the King County clerks, local Union 21 that work in the courtroom as exceptionally well qualified. I think it's important that you understand and know that your friends and your representative also have endorsed and support me. Your Senator Frog, your Representative Pollitt, and Representative Farrell. So I carry, as being a judge for 23 years, our family's values, and I bring that to the community and the court. We worked at a restaurant when I was young. My mother, Ruby Chow, and Ping Chow, and my sister, Cheryl, we all have those values, that of family, education, and community service. So I want to continue doing that for you, and I thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with you.
Philip Tell.
Thank you very much. My name is Philip Tavel. I'm running for King County District Court West Division, position number 2. And thank you all for coming out tonight. I know I asked a few of you an interesting question about how do you decide who to vote for judge? It's an incredibly difficult thing. Finding information out about judges is hard. And in the end, a lot of times it ends up coming down to 200 words in a voter pamphlet statement and a headshot. And the truth is, in the span of a year, 250,000 people come through the King County District Court system, and that means each of the judges is going to see possibly close to 10,000 people, and the lives they affect, not just the lives of those people, but their friends, their family, potential victims, it is far-reaching. And you need to know something about the judges that are there. Now, just so you know, I've been a public defender for 10 years. Before that, I was actually a high school and college physics teacher. I also helped start a national program at DeVry University in game and simulation programming. And then I went into law. Originally, I thought I was going to be a patent attorney, but I ended up falling in love with criminal law when I was in law school, worked for the Manhattan DA's office. And then I came out here to Seattle, and I got a chance to work in the public defender's office helping people, and it was the greatest thing that I had ever found. In fact, a lot more fun than working in the video game industry ever was. I've represented more than 2,000 people in that time, and I spent 3 years working in district court in that time, and I learned every single procedure and process that goes through the district court, probably with the exception of death inquests. Small claims matters, civil matters, felonies, expedited felonies, misdemeanors. I've gone to trial on things from DUI, reckless driving, and trespass, all the way up to murder and robbery. And I bring a very fair, very unbiased approach to the bench. And one of the things that's truly important to me in this is bringing accountability to the bench. Judge Chow in 1990 ran unopposed for an open seat on the district court. And in 24 years, he's never had an opponent. And in that time, unfortunately, he's also received very low ratings from the King County Bar Association's Judicial survey. And what you'll hear about is the statistical validity of that survey. And the truth is, you know, if 50 or 60 or 70 or 80 lawyers who practice in front of you all the time rate you below acceptable in 3 of the 4 practice areas and acceptable in only 1 of them, chances are people need a change. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to offer you an opportunity to vote for someone different, because remember, the district and municipal court judges of today are the appellate and the superior court judges of tomorrow. I have a unique set of experiences with my background in science and business, and also 10 years in the law handling immigration law, landlord-tenant law, victims' right advocacy, intellectual property law. I have run the gamut, and I want a chance to represent you and our communities in district court. Thank you.
Chow, you have a minute?
I just want to let some people know also some other things in my background that I wasn't able to in that. So I've been a defense attorney before I took the bench for you. I've been defense attorney, prosecutor, the mayor's legal counsel for the city of Seattle. And when I was the mayor's legal counsel, it taught me how to try and work systems in partnership. And I was one of the pioneers that helped establish the mental health courts and the therapeutic courts in our system today. I helped establish and pioneer the first one west of Florida. Now we have, fortunately, mental health courts throughout the whole country. And what that did is stop having people spin around in the jail. And the program that I was presiding over at that time reduced recidivism by 80%. So these are individuals and families that needed that outreach from other systems, but to partner up with the criminal justice system. And that's what I was able to do. Thank you.
Well, the fact is, I've actually been hearing that about Judge Chow pioneering mental health court throughout this whole process over the last 5 months. And I think people need to take a look that, in fact, the process began in 1998 after the tragic stabbing of Stanley Stevenson outside of a Mariners game. And it was Ron Sims that started the task force involving mentally ill offenders. He put Judge Casey, the then presiding judge for King County District Court, onto forming this task force and going to Broward County, Florida to study the first mental health court in America. He then presided over for a first year before he went to Superior Court, and then Judge Chow took over. In 2007, Judge Chow was actually removed from his position in mental health court for an ethical violation. So I don't think you should just listen to what we all say. Do research about us, look into it, look at the newspaper articles, see what's been said in the past, and find out the truth about who's running for these offices.
All right, if I can have both candidates up here, we will do our Q&A. I won't ask a lot of questions, but just step over here. Maple Leaf Community Council does get involved in land use actions, and when things go sideways, those land use actions end up in King County District Court. So if you can give us 60 seconds for an answer on how you approach land use cases, that would be great.
I think very simply with everything, you approach it by applying the law to the arguments that are presented before you. It's simple. There's a reason why judges are not allowed to talk about how we would find on any particular issue while we're campaigning or at any point, because you have to provide a level playing field. You have to be an unbiased person when people come to court. And when it comes to land use, especially the way things are going these days, you have to look at the law. You have to follow the law, and you have to listen to the arguments. And it's a combination of those two, and it's a simple process. And we're not allowed to say anything more than that. Thank you.
Let me start off with district court is a court of limited jurisdiction. If one knows, we do not do property, real property cases. We do landlord-tenant things, but we do not have the authority, or we do not handle cases that involve land use matters. There are some peripheral, collateral things, perhaps in the land use, but with regard to zoning, we do not handle those property issues. So I do want to make that distinction with regards to the district court as opposed to Superior Court, which is a court of general jurisdiction that would handle predominantly that. If there are land use issues with regards to breaches of contract, like for instance landlord tenants or things, apartments and things of that nature, then yes, we could get involved if someone files a case. Where you want to know on land use things is you can also go to district court for your small claims, okay, where there are no attorneys involved. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Questions from the audience?
Yeah.
Sir?
My name is Gentleman and I represent the Tampa Bay. Guys, we have an iron seal. You know, look, name inside. This iron seal. You understand what I mean? You come to this circle, it's saying for 45. It's exactly what is being collapsed. You understand what I mean?
Looking for a question.
Yeah,
for the candidates.
When we stop at this table, you know what this means? When we bring new people, you know what this means? It's supposed to be twice out. It's
Question? What's your question?
One question more important. I want one of these judges President of America talk about this for 6 years every day. Every quarter, have report to people. It's elected official. You're supposed to be report to people like
Okay, I need a question. I'm going to ask you to sit down.
Yes, very simple. When you start doing this every quarter, report to people.
I have no idea what the question was in there.
It's a question, where is you have a Q&A every quarter, like all elected officials supposed to be doing.
Got it, I understand that. All right. Yes, sir, in the back.
Really ask the first question.
Yeah.
I'll make it real easy too.
Speak loud, please.
So for the candidates, what is, a really easy question, what is the difference between a temporary worker and an immigrant in your mind?
All right.
What was the question?
I'll repeat it. If I'm incorrect, let me know, okay? The question is, what is the difference between a temporary worker and an immigrant? Is that what the question was?
Simple as can be, yes.
Okay, so that was the question, okay? A temporary worker, well, we're talking immigration law, okay? Now, I haven't done immigration law since I've taken the bench, and when I was in private practice. Okay, a temporary worker is, well, let me talk immigrants first, okay? Immigrants can come to our country legally, and in certain instances, they can apply for work certificates to be able to work. Temporary workers don't necessarily have to be immigrants. It could be anybody. It could be any one of you. So there's a question on whether or not the immigrant status necessarily combines with the temporary work situation. I hope that's not too much now, but there is a different status with regard to immigration. I can't speak to that. You know, I'm not an expert in immigration anymore. I used to do that when I was in private practice and before I went to the mayor's office.
Well, I guess a little bit by analogy, I actually lived in Australia for a couple of years, and when I went down there, I first went down there on a contract, which is similar to what it would be as a temporary worker. You're going there for a specific purpose, hopefully for a certain period of time, to find a job in a certain area. After that, you're looking to emigrate to that country to become a citizen there, or even look for just a permanent visa, then you're looking to join that country full-time. And so, you know, when I lived down in Australia, I didn't do that, I just came back here. So I think the understanding is that as a temporary worker, it's about the work you're doing, it's about staying here for a certain period of time. As an immigrant, you're looking to become a part of that country.
All right. Round of applause for both gentlemen. Thank you very much. All right, the next race is Seattle Municipal Court Position 2. John Zimmerman did respond and sent his regrets. He was not able to attend tonight. And so we've got Kimmy Kondo to come up and talk for 3 minutes, and then we will do questions and answers. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me to be up here at the Maple Leaf Community Council. Community councils are really important to the vitality of the city. I started out my political career as an activist in the Judkins Community Council, and so I'm well aware of some of the neighborhood issues that affect people who live in different areas. I'm currently the presiding judge at Seattle Municipal Court, and as the presiding judge, one of my jobs is to send out cases into the general jury trial courtrooms. And so not only do I do that in the morning, but in the afternoon, I'm now assigned to the mental health court. Over the past 24 years since I've become a judge, I've actually handled every single calendar in the court. That's everything from the arraignment calendar to the domestic violence calendar for several years, general trials where I've done hundreds of domestic violence, assault, DUI trials, the mental health court. The only calendar that I haven't handled on a regular basis is the community court. At this point, what I'm doing is a lot of administrative work because as a presiding judge, one of the things that I do is I oversee our budget. The Seattle Municipal Court takes in $4.5 million, and the City Council gives us back out of the general fund budget that now is about $28 million. So I handle a lot of what the court does with the money, and we provide accountability to the City Council. I'm also a member of the Department of Justice Crisis Intervention Committee, and one of the things that we've done this year is we've tried to reform police procedures so that we're going to be training police to deal with people in mental health crisis and behavioral crisis on the street, because we don't want to have another John Williams situation. So we're going to try to get all the patrol officers trained, and I have had input into that training process. I also created a search warrant procedure this last year so that because there are many more blood warrants, the police officers now call the judges, and although some of the judges haven't been very enthusiastic about it, we have a duty roster now where everyone signs up. We take 4 or 5 weeks from Friday noon to the next Friday noon. We're on duty 24/7. And that means that if we get a call at 3, 4, 5, 6, or 8 in the morning, or 10 in the morning, we take the call, we listen to the police officer, and the officer sends us the warrants through email. We review the warrants, we decide if we're going to sign them or not, and we send them back. I also created a procedure where the officers can then file those warrants electronically back in the court. It's a lot more efficient. We can process a search warrant in about 11 to 15 minutes, depending on things going on. But I really think that at this point, I understand the court. I still like my job. I'm enthusiastic about continuing my job, and I hope that you vote for me. Thank you.
All right, first question. In terms of the municipal court, what do you think is the biggest day-to-day impact, what you do at the municipal, or what any of the municipal court judges do in terms of quality of life here in Maple Leaf? So, 60 seconds.
Municipal court judges also oversee the 7 or the 6 magistrates. Well, there are 5.5 magistrates actually. And so in terms of the everyday impact on people in Maple Leaf, it's probably the work that the magistrates do overseeing the contested and non-contested mitigation traffic hearing calendar, because I know there are a lot of school zone issues up here. I know that there are people that speed. I know that there are a lot of things that go on with retail theft up in the Northgate area. The magistrates handle some of the traffic infractions. We handle a lot of retail theft issues up in Northgate. Probably a huge percentage of the retail theft that we see comes from the mall up here and around the surrounding areas. So in terms of the Maple Leaf area, those are the primary crimes, and probably vehicle problem too. I imagine that some of you probably have been victims of those kinds of crimes as well.
All right, questions from the audience?
Yeah.
Do you have a question this time?
Yes, absolutely. 100%. Ma'am, spent up on that around you for a couple of years. It asked a very simple question. When you do the report to people, because you decide judge, because of the report to people, not only to courts, because of the report to people, every quarter, or every 6 months, or every year. It's never happened for 20 years. My question to you, if you give this question before a couple of times, for a couple of years, then that America, when you start to report to the people that are supposed to be by Constitution, by common sense.
All right, I think I got the question. You have to watch it a few times. Are there any part of your court rules where you provide reports to the people on your activities? 30 seconds.
We report statistics to the administrative office of the court in terms of our case filings and our dispositions. And so if you check the AOC website, inside court or WashingtonCourt.gov, you can get statistics on what we do in the court system.
Any other questions? Oh, whoops. Oh, we got one over here, and then I'll come to you.
Since the alternate person is not here, I'm just hoping to hear from you, what is one distinguishing characteristic that you offer that perhaps your opponent does not?
Well, I was rated exceptionally well qualified by the King County Bar. He was rated not qualified.
We have hundreds of people who live in their vehicles who often get caught in the cycle of ticketing. What sort of guidance do you give the magistrates? They often have repeated tickets on license tabs expiring because you get too many other kinds of tickets. What sort of latitude do you offer the magistrates in dealing with that?
We actually have a program where we're going to be doing on-vehicle license noticing, and so that before people's vehicles get the boot after 4 tickets now, We have a new system that we're going to put into place. We're also going to be trying to refer those folks, and it's partly through the police department too. This is partly their initiative through the city council. We're going to try to guide people to housing opportunities and social service resources so that we understand that a lot of people that are living in their cars don't have a lot of choice. They're homeless. And so we're trying to do what we can to guide them to some services and not just, and the magistrates all understand that as well.
Last question.
You mentioned initially all of the calendars that you handle. Can you explain the significance of that? I don't know what that means.
Oh, it's just the different kinds of work that we do in the court. We have specialized calendars. We have one full court and a half a court that does nothing but domestic violence cases. We have a half of a calendar that does mental health calendar cases. We have a community court that handles low-level crimes, and we do diversions into community court. We have 3 general trial courts, actually 3.5 general trial courts, so that I send out into those courtrooms things like DUI, vehicle prowl, theft, assault, those kind of cases.
So you send cases out to the court?
I send cases as the presiding judge and the master calendar judge. I send the cases into the courtroom.
Right. Round of applause, please. Thank you very much for coming. So next up is the race for Washington State Senate for the 46th Legislative District, which I'm sure you all know, we all live in. Our Senator David Frost, come up, you have 3 minutes. Van Sperry, his opponent, did not respond to our repeated emails to invitations to attend.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, David, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here again. I was here 2 years ago, and I think I was here 2 years before that. This is my 3rd election in the last 4 years. By way of recollection, some of you may recall, I ran for the State House in 2010 and was elected, and I was expected to serve there, hopefully for some time, and we lost Senator White in 2011, actually 3 years ago this week, and I was appointed to fill out his term for that year and then reelected in 2012. So that's a little background of where I am. I'm an attorney by training. I'm 45 years old. I have 11-year-old twins who are in Seattle Public Schools at Jane Addams Middle School. I want you to know kind of my philosophy in the legislation, what I've tried to do over the last 4 years that I've been able to serve. And that is that I feel that I represent a progressive district, and I would consider myself a progressive politician. But I'm also pragmatic, and I think it's important to find common ground and make government work and actually get things accomplished. And I'm proud of the record that I've been able to acquire the last few years. I've been able to pass 12 pieces of legislation in a whole variety of areas, and another 5 or so that I've worked with. I was the Senate sponsor of bills that passed through the House versions passed. So things that are pragmatic, things that maybe weren't being addressed. For example, we did something to increase the penalties for DUI vehicular homicides. It didn't get a lot of attention, but we had a very low penalty, and we brought that up to the manslaughter range. We know from our own community how important it is to make sure that we're enforcing DUI laws and we have better systems in place. And we're going to do something else, I hope, this year, and I hope to be a part of that, and that is to lower the number of times that is required for you to be charged with a felony DUI. Right now, it takes 5 times for you to be charged before you're charged with felony DUI, picked up on that count. So there are pragmatic things that we need to do. That needs to be more like in the 3 or 4 range. So I sort of try to have an independent voice and be thoughtful in these things and try to find ways to solve problems like this. I will tell you that from my standpoint, what I try to do is think about how I can provide opportunities to our people, to middle-class families. I'm very proud of my record on higher education. I've been endorsed by Graduate Washington, which I would describe as the leading student advocacy group in the state, and also the UW Impact. I feel like I was a leader in trying to fully fund higher education. I fought for the GET program to make sure that we could put enough money in to stabilize the funding for that program, which is the middle class savings program. And I want you to know that I'm going to be working very, very hard to make sure that in this very tough budget environment that we do everything we can to keep tuition in check, make sure that our system is accessible, make sure that UW is more open, but also all of our states, all of our institutions in the state are more open, and that we find a way to ensure that opportunity through our higher education system is available to all of our students. So I would very much appreciate your support again. It's been a great privilege and honor to serve you these last 4 years, and I would be very pleased to have another 4 if you'll be inclined to give me that term. Thank you very much.
Questions? Here.
Yeah, we have a considerable shortfall in the education area. What are your ideas for what we're going to have to do to close that?
Well, I think we have, we were just meeting today, and I've been involved in bipartisan meetings. I think the first thing I want you to understand is that this problem, in my view, is too big for one party to solve it. Whatever the Senate composition is, and it could be slightly in Democratic favor, it could be slightly in the Republican favor, we're going to have very close to divided government. We have to find some common ground. So the shortfall is probably, depending on what initiatives pass, it could be between 2 and 4 and 5 billion. I think that you've got to look at perhaps some new revenue sources. There are things that I think would make sense, which would be to have a capital gains tax with a generous exemption level. We don't have anything like that. I think that could help stabilize things like higher education, and then some of that general fund money could go into the educational system. There are other options in terms of closing tax loopholes. We tried very hard the last few years to close them, and because of the stalemate in the Senate, there were several that could not be passed. But I think one of the things I'm very proud of is that as a freshman in the House, I led the effort, along with 2 other of my colleagues, to overturn the Tim Eyman initiative that made it impossible for us to do anything on the revenue side, even talk about tax reform. And we had his political and legal strategy, and I think that's one of the things I'm most proud about having done.
You mentioned the budget shortfall,
Yes.
and you voted for SB 5952, the $8 billion giveaway to Boeing.
Yeah.
So if you talk about closing
Sure.
tax loopholes, Boeing has decided they don't want to be in Washington State. They moved their headquarters. They're moving jobs out. In order for us to look at an economy beyond Boeing, what are you going to be doing to help fund it, not only education, but transportation? Those 2 areas are
Right.
lacking, and without those, it's going to kill our economy. So what's your position?
Well, first of all, let me say a word about the
60
Boeing.
seconds.
Let me say a word about the Boeing tax credit. I think it's something that's been obviously talked about. I want to explain exactly what we did. There was a tax rate that had been in place since 2003, and what we did was extend that for 15 years to 2040. Now, so it's not the case that the state wrote Boeing an $8 billion check. What we did was we put some money into aerospace training, and we extended the rates so that they could invest securely in this state. Now, I will tell you, I'm extremely disappointed with what I've seen. And I think it's a fair criticism for us, including myself. I think we put better protections in than we did 10 years ago, and I was not in the legislature then. But it's fair to say that we could have done better in some regards, particularly when you see what they're doing with SPIA. I will tell you, I've been endorsed by the machinists and by SPIA, and what I hope to do on Boeing is for us to go back and say that we ought to have employment guarantees for Boeing if they are going to take advantage of these tax credits. That's what they have in South Carolina, and I think now that they are committed to being here, it's reasonable for us to go back in and reopen that. I don't think that we should have a situation where we're thinking about moving beyond aerospace. I think we should be bringing more aerospace here. We have a great workforce, we have great engineering, and I think the governor and all of us in elected office should be thinking about creative ways to try to recruit more aerospace and get more aerospace here. I think that's a core part of our state's economy.
One more short question, Joel.
I wondered when you said that you weren't able to get DUI felony status, what is the story?
Yeah.
Why does that happen?
So, yes, I'll try to be as very quick as I can on that question. What we did do is we increased the penalties if you kill somebody and you are drunk. Basically, charged with DUI. So your charge is if you committed manslaughter. That was not the case before. The issue here has always been, and it's really something, and this is why I say we have to look at education, we have to look at all of our needs. It's a cost factor, and you have people in the legislature saying we don't want to incarcerate more people for this because it ends up costing a lot of money, like $100 million. But in my mind, this is one area, and I'm not a wide advocate for longer sentences and just willy-nilly, but this is one area where the public safety is just critical. And so I think that if someone has 3 chances, for crying out loud, and they keep getting picked up for DUI, it's reasonable to charge them with a felony at that point in time. And I think that's the policy that we ought to pursue.
Okay, Washington State 46th District State House position number 2, Jessamine Farrell, and her opponent, Brandon Curtis, did not respond. So we've got 3 minutes, and then we'll do some Q&A.
Good evening. Thank you so much for hosting me tonight. My name is Jessamine Farrell, and I am here to ask for your support in my bid for re-election in my second term for 46th District State Representative Position 2. So a little bit about my background. I grew up in Lake City and Lake Forest Park. I went to public schools. I went to the University of Washington. I am an attorney by training and have spent most of my career working on transportation issues, specifically getting more transit service in our city and more bike and pedestrian infrastructure. That's an issue I care deeply about. I'm also the mother of 3. And I ran in 2012 because there are some things that I believe very deeply in. Number 1 is that every single kid in this state deserves a high quality education, whether it is in an early learning environment, our K through 12 public school system, and also post-secondary education. That's something I believe very deeply. Number 2, I believe that if you work hard, you should earn a fair wage. I believe that if you are working full-time, if you're working part-time, you should get a fair wage, you should have paid sick leave, and you should have a safe workplace. That's really important to me. Thirdly, I believe that we have to combat climate change for the sake of our kids' future, for the sake of our grandchildren's future. The time is, frankly, too late, but we still have to do something about it to stabilize our climate, and I'm in the state legislature to do those things. As a freshman legislator, I've fought to increase transit. I have introduced a bill to increase the statewide minimum wage. I have fought to make oil transportation safer, as we are seeing more and more crude oil transported over our state, our land and water. And I have fought with my freshman colleagues to preserve our social safety net, even as we're facing major pressures to fund more education. We can't do that at the sake of cutting our food programs and our housing programs and our mental health programs. So I know that there is so much work ahead of us. I am hoping that you will send me back, and I am happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions? Thank you.
So I really appreciate your voting for transportation and education and minimum wage. Those are very important issues, and so those are reasons why I voted for you before. How did you vote on the Boeing tax break, and how do you square all these tax breaks for big corporations and these tax loopholes with all these goals that you're looking to have to be able to do in the legislature?
That is a great question. So this is the learning of a freshman. So I voted yes on the Boeing package, and I will say quite bluntly, really, we didn't even need my vote. And so I'm going to tell you why I voted for that. And so there are 2 pieces to this. Number 1, closing tax loopholes is very important to me. I think we need to structurally change our system. But it is also very, very difficult. And it is because both Democratic and Republican leadership use it as a way to keep business at the table. So closing tax loopholes is an extremely hard thing to do because it is very entrenched, and I have 30 seconds left, so this is my theory of social change. In the Boeing legislation, there was some small, important structural changes to have more accountability for closing loopholes. In the past, we just hand them out, we don't have sunsets, we don't have accountability, and I know that structural change and social change is really hard. And because of those changes in the way we do business and the way we give out tax loopholes, in this case, I voted yes. Now, that means that my time is up. David said a lot of good things about what we need to do in this coming session to make this work, but I agree, it is not a great way to do business, but I saw some small structural changes that made me vote yes.
Hi. Is that on? I appreciate your comment about being able to make an affordable wage. However, as somebody who's firmly middle class, I find myself conflicted when people who are making $9.50 an hour suddenly are making $15 an hour. I feel like I'm making less. And I'd like to know how we extend affordable wages beyond the lowest people to help also get the middle class closer to where it was 40 years ago?
That's a great question as well. So I am a deep believer in making steps to undo the vast income inequality that we've seen happen over the last, particularly 2 decades, but really over the last 40 years. And raising the minimum wage is one piece of that puzzle, but it is not a silver bullet. It helps a certain, strata of our workforce, but not everyone. And some of the things that I think we need to do for our middle class, in some things, is to make things more affordable, like a university education. When I went to the UW, the state subsidized 70% of my education and my family paid 30%. As a middle class family, that was significant. Now it's exactly reversed. So we can invest in those things that at one time were much more affordable, like public education, public university education. We can make sure that our workforce is ready and prepared. Am I out of time? Okay. We can make sure that we've trained our workforce to be nimble and to be able to take on those jobs where there are openings in the STEM fields, and my time is up, but in the STEM fields. So those are a couple of things that we can do. It's a multidisciplinary problem.
Last question.
That leads to the question regarding the temporary workers. 1.1 million came into this country in 2009. About 1 million are coming in every year. Temporary technology workers, not immigrants. And they're coming into this state, tens of thousands or more, to work for Microsoft and the other big technology companies, primarily Microsoft. What is your policy? What do you want to do about giving them free educations and access to some things that normally citizens would want to, or green card holders, or people on a path to citizenship would be getting also?
So I'll answer this question with broad principles because I'm not an expert on temporary worker visa policy. It's a complicated issue, but I would say 2 things. First of all, getting back to that issue of middle class jobs, we know that we have lots and lots of job openings in certain sectors, but that we don't have an educated workforce to be able to necessarily take all of those jobs, that we don't produce enough college graduates in Washington State to be able to be ready to take on those positions. The second principle, though, is that we are a country of immigrants. We are a country of people from all over the world. My family is, from other places. And so as we are looking for solutions on this issue, I think on the one hand, we need to make sure that the people who live here are well educated and can be able to do the jobs that we have open. But on the other hand, I believe deeply in an open and an open society. So those are the principles that I would look at that issue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. For Washington State Legislature position number 1, Jerry Paulette, who's in the back of the room, Jerry, stand up, wave your hand, is running unopposed. And so because of time pressure, we don't have a specific spot scheduled for Jerry, but if you can hang on towards the end of the meeting, I promise if we are not running terribly over time, we'll get you in. Okay? But I just wanted to make sure that he really wanted to come and he really wanted to talk. But he's an easy vote this time since there's nobody running against him. So Seattle Municipal Court position number 7, Dana Shadid and Fred Bonner. Gentlemen, Damon, 3 minutes to start.
Hi, thanks for having me here today. My name is Damon Shadid, and I am running for Seattle Municipal Court Judge, position 7. And usually when I tell people I'm running for Seattle Municipal Court, I get a couple of questions. 1, what kind of name is Shadid? 2, what's Seattle Municipal Court? And 3, why should I care? So I'll try to answer all of those questions for you and tell you a little bit about what I want to bring to the bench. My name, Damon Shadid, my grandmother came here from a small Christian village in Lebanon, came to the country at the turn of the century, entered as an undocumented alien because she couldn't come through Ellis Island due to health problems. And she settled, and it took her a really long time to get her citizenship, to raise her sons, to send them to law school and medical school, and later on, my father was able to send me to law school as well. So in a real way, my family has lived the American dream. Seattle Municipal Court is the largest court by far in the entire state. And it's so important because, for instance, if you care about what's going on with the SPD right now, you should know that something like 90% of cases where SPD makes an arrest end up in Seattle Municipal Court. So if you care about community safety, if you care about SPD, you care about Seattle Municipal Court. But also, Seattle Municipal Court is the place where people come for the first time, sometimes the only time, and it's the only exposure that they actually get to the government. And a lot of vulnerable populations come through there as well. Homeless people, immigrants, domestic violence victims, DUI subjects. And so if you care about the vulnerable populations in Seattle, you also care about Seattle Municipal Court. And so it's absolutely essential, even though most of you will never step foot in Seattle Municipal Court on any kind of crime or even an infraction, it matters in your life. It matters for your community safety, and it matters for those around you. And we need to have answers in court that are going to address the issues that you guys deal with every day. And so I plan to bring 3 important qualities to the bench. Number 1, engagement. I plan to engage with the community like I've been doing for the past 15 years. I've been working in the community. I've been endorsed by leaders from across the community, including Sheriff John Urquhart, Estela Ortega from El Centro de la Raza, Gerald Hankerson from the NAACP. But I will also bring collaboration. I will collaborate with as many people as will listen and will work with Seattle Municipal Court in order to make us all safer. I'm proud to be endorsed by Senator David Brock, by the 46, by 6 out of 9 of the Seattle City Council, by 3 out of 9 of the King County Council. And I will also bring hard work. I will work hard every day, both in court and out of court, to make sure we have the best court system that we can possibly have. That's why I'm proud to have been rated exceptionally well qualified by 5 different bar organizations. I will work hard every day to make sure that Seattle Municipal Court is a model for the rest of the country. I would appreciate your support, I would appreciate your vote, and I look forward to your questions.
Bonner.
Good afternoon, and thanks for the invite to appear before you tonight. My name is Fred Bonner. I'm a Seattle Municipal Court judge and have been so for the last 20 plus years. I'm a 6-year United States Air Force veteran. My judicial philosophy has been forged by my work experience, having worked at the King County Prosecutor's Office, the City Attorney's Office, the National Labor Relations Board. During the last 12 years, I have been presiding judge of Seattle Municipal Court on 4 different occasions. One of my duties and responsibilities during that 10 years was developing a project called Alternatives to Confinement. And we became aware that not every person that commits an offense should go to jail, should be confined. As a result of that project, and even during a time where there was record budget decrements that the court was required to take, I, along with my criminal justice partners, were able to implement several very progressive measures, one of them being community court. Community court primarily handled theft cases, and a part of the community court was a theft awareness class that everybody that entered community court had to take to learn what the impact on the retail establishment would be. Each person that goes through community court was required to access social services, be they homeless, be they undereducated, be they chemical dependent. The next project that I was able to implement was a pre-sentence day reporting. Many individuals who are charged with an offense in Seattle Municipal Court are unable to get out of jail because they can't post a bail because of the numerous failure to appears that they may have had. And the purpose of the bail is to assure that they are going to return when they are required to. So the pre-sentence day reporting allows them to be released and report to our court resource center and be reminded of the court date. As a veteran, I was also able to implement a veterans court, the first in King County, and that has been a tremendous success. I still maintain contact with many of the individuals who have entered and completed community court. And these are people who partner up with individuals who are like them, who suffer from post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury. And they're able to function better by being with people like them. It has been a wonderful experience having dealt with these individuals and to see their progress from the time they come in and watch them as they continue and improve. And Having said that, I would appreciate the support from, I keep saying, I would appreciate your support in the coming election. Thank you.
So I am well aware that these are low information races, and so I encourage everybody to take advantage of the few resources that we have to actually understand where we're coming from and what we're doing. Today, I was happy to receive the endorsement of The Stranger, the Seattle newspaper. And I've also been rated exceptionally well qualified, as I said, by 5 different bar organizations. There are 7 total bar organizations in the city. I've been rated by all 7 of them. The other 2 rated me well qualified, which was their second highest rating. There's also a bar forum online that was an hour and a half long, and only about 12 people watched that a year, but you can go to the King County Bar Association website and you can watch that as well. Because I truly believe this is really important, and people should go in as educated as they can. Judges should open themselves up to every rating process that there is. They should go for every endorsement that there is. They should really talk to people to let people know who they are and what they stand for. I'm confident that if you go to my website, if you take a look at votingforjudges.com, if you take a look at The Stranger, you'll see that there's a real choice in this race, and I'm confident that I can get your vote. So please, do your research, take a look at it, and I look forward to talking to anyone.
I would like for you to also think about those progressive measures that I have been able to work with and implement to deal with people who commit quality of life crimes, veterans who have been self-medicated and they are dropped out of the system, and helping them get back into the system. The pre-sentence day reporting program and the connection with social services that these people have been able to because of the progressive Seattle Community Court that I have helped develop over a period of years. Thanks.
Questions? Sure.
This is going to be a stereo
Yeah, but your
question.
questions at the same time each time, so question here.
It's going to be a stereo question. We're both going to ask a question at the same time here. Okay, I'll try to talk louder. Nationally, there are between 1 and 2 million people incarcerated in this country. I don't know what the number is. Don't ever get a straight answer from our government about it, whether it's 1 million or 2 million. But how many people are incarcerated in the state of Washington?
I can't tell you the numbers that are incarcerated in the state of Washington, but I can tell you that our pre- and post-sentence day reporting program has kept at least 110 people each day out of custody. I can't tell you about the state level throughout the country. I know there are reporting services that we can access to find out, but I can tell you locally, Seattle Municipal Court has done a tremendous job in keeping people out of custody that don't need to be there.
I have a question.
So it is true that, part of what a municipal court does is incarceration. That's the punishment side of it. And for too long, it's been the focus of the courts. And that's a problem because we have to think about what is going to make us actually safer. And putting someone in jail, giving a conviction, throwing them back out on the street for a minor offense where they can't get jobs, where they can't get housing, that's going to be a problem in the future. It certainly is, and so that's something we need to think about. And I think that your question stems from this frustration, that we feel like we're throwing people in jail and then nothing's actually happening to make our community safer and our community better. And I will tell you, I've been committed to access to justice causes for the past 15 years. I've been committed to race and social justice causes for the past 15 years. I've been working in the community in education and disproportionality and discipline and all kinds of areas that I feel make me uniquely qualified to address some of these disproportionality issues that we have both in our court system and in the incarceration system. I look forward to doing that.
I have a question.
Alexander? Can I get to you?
Yes.
Not every time, but I get to you.
Thank you very much. Sit down with my my name is Alexander, and I represent the I think Judge Bonner have experience with you last year, because then that Bonner have experience approximately 50 judges for the last few years.
Question?
So, question very simple. How is this possible, and why you elect a state for 20, 25 years? Look, this man, he's nice, smart, so for 25 years, No.
All right, I think I got your question.
Yeah.
He wants to know how you managed to be reelected for 25 years. How's it possible?
I can answer. When you can.
I guess I ran 6 times, so that's 24. And this time will be 25. So I need your vote. I guess one of the reasons that I've been elected as many times because most of the electorate felt that I was doing a tremendous job. So,
It's not about you, it's about system.
well, this is the only system that we have for the election of judges, so we have to take advantage of what we do have until it changes. So, right now, this is all that we do. This is all that we do have.
You know, this issue of whether or not judges should be elected has been coming up over and over again. You know, I don't think that Judge Bonner has had an opponent for quite some time, but that's not really the issue. The issue is that it's important that judges get out in the community, that they meet people, that they understand the community that they're supposed to be representing. I think judges should be more than people who just sit in a courtroom. I think judges should be out in the community. I think they should be providing leadership. I think they should be listening to people. That's what I've been doing for the past 15 years. I have no plans of stopping that when I get on the bench, and I will look forward every 4 years to another election should I be elected this time.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. All right, so the next up is the Seattle preschool measures, and I want to give a little bit of explanation because this is not unprecedented, but a little bit of an unusual two-part vote. So on your ballot, you are going to be asked 2 questions related to Seattle preschool issues. The first question is should either of these measures be enacted into law? And then you will mark your ballot either yes or no. And regardless of how you voted, whether you vote yes or whether you vote no, you will be asked to choose between Prop 1A or Prop 1B. And the way it will work is if more people answer yes to the first question, then whichever one of Prop 1A or Prop 1B gets the most votes is theoretically the one that will be enacted. If most people vote in the city vote no on the initial question, then neither of them will be enacted. Yes, I know, it's a 2-step process. It's, not just A or B, it's should we have one of these 2 preschool things, yes or no, and then which one. Now the important thing to remember is even if you vote no on the first question, that you don't think either one of these measures is something that you want, you can still vote on 1A or 1B, and which way you vote on that will depend. So if you vote no on the first question and you lose, and the entire city votes yes, you can still have an input on which one you think. Or you can exercise your right, as any voter does, and not vote for any of it because you're confused or don't want to. But just so you know, yes or no, even if you vote no, you can make a choice on 1A or 1B. And the focus of our evening's program tonight on this issue is to talk about, 1A and 1B. And once you hear these 2, we'll leave it up to you to decide whether you want either one of them. So for the Prop 1A side, we've got 3 speakers. They are going to share this 3-minute however they wish, but they still only get 3 minutes. Tricia Schroeder, Laura Chandler, and Chessie Snyder, would you please come up? Or 2 of the 3, however that may work tonight. So you have together 3 minutes total, and your timekeeper's right there.
I'll start. I'm here to talk about 1A because I've been a teacher in child care in Seattle, Washington for 25 years. I'm also a working mother. And Proposition 1A is about child care, mostly to support working parents. Seattle has some of the most expensive childcare in the United States. 1 year for a young child costs the same as 1 year at the University of Washington. It's very hard for working families to afford this. High turnover among childcare teachers is 40% a year, which creates a learning and emotional issue for children who need stability at this time of their life. And Seattle lacks a training and standard system to assure the quality and safety of the 22,000 children aged birth to 5 who are in the 750 child care centers in Seattle. Only Proposition 1A improves quality for all of Seattle's kids by reducing teacher turnover through higher wages and a training institute. Only Proposition 1A requires City Hall to address the high cost of child care for all families, as Denver, San Francisco, and other cities have already done. Proposition 1A's mandates cost the city $3 million a year, money that could easily come from the existing surplus levy funds. We can all agree the idea of preschool for all sounds good, but that's not really what 1B does. 1B would help about 7% of Seattle's children aged 3 and 4 by the end of 2018. The other 90% of Seattle's kids are in childcare because their parents are at work. By the time they're 4, 85% of a child's brain is developed. These are crucial early learning years. Proposition 1B reinvents the wheel. Instead of improving the existing childcare facilities we have with that 22,000 children, they will also not be able to work with Seattle Public Schools. They will not have spaces for these new preschools. So those new preschools will actually wind up in private businesses. Some of them corporate-owned facilities like Bright Horizons. Also, I'd like to let you know that 1A is preferred by the League of Women Voters. It's supported by teachers like me, the NAACP, Working Washington, the Economic Opportunity Institute, and Representative Jerry Paulette. Thank you.
Is that time?
There's more time.
So I'm Tricia Schroeder. I'm a mom who lives in the neighborhood of 2 young kids, and I'm supporting Proposition 1A because it is the only option out there that addresses the full range of the crisis, including the high cost of childcare to families. Seattle is one of the most expensive places for childcare in the country, and it is, like I said, the one that spans the full range of the crisis here in Seattle.
Thank you. And for Prop 1B, John Bancroft and Austin Miller. And once again, you'll be sharing 3 minutes, and your timekeeper's right there.
Hello, I'm John Bancroft. I'm a parent of 3 kids in Seattle who I'm blessed to still be having live here, and I am also a grandfather and a grandfather-to-be. But I think really what I want to tell you is I was blessed to be the Head Start Director for King and Pierce County for 20 years, a program that has proven the effectiveness of preschool and getting kids ready for school and life. But I had one terrible part of the job. I told my staff I would take the tough questions from parents. And so I would get parents who, earning $20,000 a year with a family of 3, were too rich to qualify for Head Start. Head Start's for only very low-income families. So if they wanted preschool, at what income could they start affording preschool? $40,000 a year, $50,000 a year, just preschool, not to mention childcare, costs about $500 a month. Proposition 1B will make preschool affordable for all families in Seattle. It starts off in a measured way. We want to make sure we get it right. For 250 children next year, it will start immediately. After 4 years, it will serve 2,000 children. And by the way, there are 12,000 3- and 4-year-old children in the city of Seattle. No, this program does not serve infants and toddlers. We don't know if the taxpayer is ready for that yet. It doesn't serve school-age children. Both of those are important. But of the 12,000 3- and 4-year-old children in Seattle, 8,000 are in some kind of preschool. Only 4,000 are in no services. At the end of 4 years, this would serve 2,000 children, in community-based settings. It would not displace any children from K-12 classrooms. And it would be available to all families who choose it. It will be affordable, will have outcomes for kids, and maybe best of all, it's funded. It's funded with a modest property tax of about $40 a year for a house worth $400,000. Proposition A, on the other hand, sets lofty goals, but provides no funding to pay for it. It's estimated that it will cost the city $140 million next year, $100 million every year after that, which will force a 10% cutback of all city services, including fire and police. And also, last but not least, it will require all child care providers, whether they want to or not, go to a new and ill-defined professional development institute. They will get a work permit, which they have to work in Seattle, but will not be able to be used in Shoreline or Rim. So I urge you to vote yes for Proposition 1B.
1 minute.
My time's up already.
No, you but, sorry, no.
Great. So it's simply not true, the fiscal note that has been developed by the city's own fiscal folks. This will cost, Prop 1A will cost closer to about $3 million, which can easily come from the city's Department of Education and Early Learning. It's a new department that has a budget of nearly $50 million, so it's $3 million of that could go to this. Most of it would go towards establishing a professional development institute to coordinate existing training programs for the city's 4,500 child care workers. The rest would end up going towards staff to make policy recommendations. In response to the training piece, Prop 1A ensures that all of the 4,500 early educators would have relevant training based in the reality of the workers that do it, preventing things such as crib death, identifying child abuse, detecting learning disability warning signs, and promoting emotional development. So it's not some lofty program. It's something based in what providers and the people doing the work have developed.
1 minute.
So thank you very much for having us today. Real quickly, so the difference between these two plans is that our plan is focused on actually closing the achievement gap within our city. If children are not reading at grade level by the time they reach the 3rd grade, the chances of them graduating high school, going to college, and incarceration rates all increase. And we know what we can do to fix that, and that's through high quality preschool, which is exactly what 1B is designed to do. Unfortunately, 1A has some very great ideas, but unfortunately it is unfunded. And if it's going to get at affordability for families, there has to be funding to make that happen, and that's where that $100 million comes from. Ours is a very modest property tax levy of $58 million over 4 years, or $43 a household, or the cost of a latte a month. So if you look at that compared to trying to make all 0 to 5-year-olds affordable, there has to be funding to make that happen. It can't be both ways, and to say that it only costs $3 million. And so the city's budget office did a fiscal analysis to say that's simply untrue. We're endorsed by the King County Labor Council, as well as The Stranger, United Way, Seattle Human Services Coalition, and several other organizations you know and trust.
All right, questions? Right here.
Somebody cited the 40% turnover rate for early childhood educators, and I think part of that has to do too with the fact that they're paid so little. And I'm just wondering if either the prop does anything to address that issue, because our kids deserve quality educators and they also deserve a quality salary.
30 seconds for answers.
Proposition 1B has sufficient funding to pay the teachers and assistant teachers, which will come to about 200 or 300 teachers a year, at public school salaries, which maybe aren't as high as they could be, but they're a lot higher than anything else. They're up in the $17 to $25 an hour range, and that will set an example, and I think be an upward pressure on all, upward pressure in a good way for all early learning salaries in Seattle.
Yes, Proposition 1A. totally about increasing salaries. You know, there is a $15 minimum wage thing. Most child care centers would not reach that until 7 years from now. But we propose that we get people up there 3 years from now, because that would stop turnover. The other thing is that we were asking the city to establish a fund to help child care centers come up with the money they need to bridge that gap from what they currently pay to $15 an hour. Help they will not get with the city's current unfunded mandate.
Yeah. How do these competing props directly help children of the lowest income families to actually get into early childhood education?
1 minute.
So Prop 1A addresses the full crisis of education, of early childhood education. Not every child can go into preschool. People need the entire gamut of early learning settings, from in-home childcare to childcare centers, to be able to have a stable learning environment. And as Laura said earlier, 85% of their brain is developed by the time they're 3 years old, before they're entering school. So making sure that this is a stable place for all kids. It's the only one that's been endorsed by the NAACP, the League of Women Voters, folks that feel that this will be addressing the breadth and the depth in the low-income communities and communities of color.
I'm glad you asked that. Prop 1A does not provide funding to serve one additional child of any income, no additional slots. Prop 1B provides some significant funding, which in year 4 will serve 2,000 more children, and definitely will prioritize the most at-risk children as defined by low income, children with disabilities, and children who speak English as a second language. So that's concrete money for slots, not setting lofty goals.
One more question.
That was just for me.
Yes, I'd like to know where are all of these classes going to be held that you're talking about? How much is it going to cost for these classes, and how are these children going to get there?
That's a great question. So this Proposition 1B is going to be a mixed delivery system, much like we already have within the state of Washington and the city of Seattle. It's going to create high-quality public preschool. And what we mean by mixed delivery is that it can be in community providers that meet the criteria that is set by the city. So those organizations that want to voluntarily participate within the program and meet the criteria can house these classrooms. There's also funding within the plan of that $58 million to help actually build additional classrooms. And we can partner with the Seattle Public School District only insofar if they are interested in partnering with us. We certainly understand that class size and class space is an issue, and getting at that class size issue, actually Prop 1B makes sure that there's a cap at 20 students per classroom, and that there's at least 2 students for every classroom if there's 20 kids. So we are looking at a lot of ways to house these classrooms, not specifically in just public schools.
What about the cost?
So the cost is through that $58 million property tax levy. That's how we're paying for this.
We get part 2 of it.
So Prop 1B only helps 6.7% of Seattle's children under the age of 5 by the end of 2018. The other 92% of Seattle's kids will still be in unstable, haphazard preschools and childcare. And by the time they're 4 and in preschool, like we said, 85% of their brain's already developed. This only affects a small portion of Seattle's children for the $58 million that we've been talking about. Prop 1B reinvents the wheel instead of improving the 750 existing preschools and childcare facilities that are already here. And Seattle public schools don't have enough room. So many of these funded classrooms, we worry, are going to end up in corporate environments like Bright Horizons and not in our public schools.
Thank you very much. All right. Washington State Initiative 1351 that has to do with specifying maximum class sizes. The No campaign did not respond. Shannon McCann, are you here for the yes? You are. You've got 3 minutes and then we'll take some questions.
Thank you so much.
And as a teacher, thank you for participating in democracy, everyone. And also, as a teacher, I'm so excited to be part of the process of growing our aerospace employees here in Washington State. My name is Shannon McCann, and I'm a middle school special education teacher. I work with students with intellectual disabilities, such as autism, so that's traditionally a kind of a self-contained environment. But the reason why I'm here is because our classes are so crowded that my students can't get into the general education classes because there's already 31 students, or even in our choir class, 42 students. So that is why we tell our students every day, take a risk. Let's take a risk in our learning, and so I'm taking a risk and speaking with you in the community and sharing a little bit about what happens in our classrooms. So Washington State is 47th in the nation. We have some of the most crowded classrooms in the whole country. Crowded classrooms means that a teacher is spending their time answering a lot of questions, especially in math and science classes, answering so many questions before moving on with the content. And again, in science and technology, we want to bring our employees right from our towns here to be working in our wonderful industries. But when you have so many classrooms or so many students in our classroom, it means the gifted students are waiting. It means that our struggling students aren't getting the attention, and we know that more one-on-one attention will improve our students' likelihood of succeeding, graduating, and also being engaged in our classrooms. So 1351 means that we could be bringing in another teacher or educator into the classroom to increase the staff-to-student ratios. It could mean moving students into classrooms that are already built and having another educator there. It could mean that in some areas they will build classrooms because money would be freed up to build more classrooms. But I looked around in the room and everyone's sitting in a maroon chair, and there's around 30 of you. So if you look around, that is what a middle school classroom looks like right now. And in Seattle Public Schools here in this school, we have around 24 to 29 students per class. So relationships are really what education is all about. That's why our students are going to keep coming back to class. It's what our students remember. When we have our lower class size, so 1351 will reduce class size to around 17 students per class from K to 3 and around 25 students per class in the higher grades. And that was determined by a bipartisan committee called the Quality Education Council, and that's part of the McCleary decision. So this will be a 4-year implementation project to plan and to budget for 1351. It's not an overnight initiative. There will be substantial time to plan. But what it means is that students will receive the one-on-one attention that they need, and that educators will be able to give that feedback, and that the nurturing environment that all our students deserve, no matter what their backgrounds are, no matter if they have special need or a different language, but they deserve the opportunity to succeed in our public schools. So thank you so much.
Questions?
So I absolutely believe in the smaller class size. However, I also know that our education is already underfunded, and we're already suing the government to say you're not providing this, what you already said that you're going to. So I think it's awesome, and yet I don't see how it's going to happen fiscally.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. And there is no organized opposition to 1351, and that's the one question that many of us had. Hey, how are we going to pay for this? So like I said, there's a 4-year implementation, so it's not like overnight we're spending all this money. We're strategically creating a plan so that school districts can have an accurate and appropriate approach for their district. So in some areas, like I said, they could add another educator to a classroom and therefore reduce the ratio. The money would be less than $1 billion per year to lower class size for all students across the state. Sorry, sir, I said less than $1 billion, yes, that's what I said. And to clarify, as a new educator, I'm coming into education knowing that there's been a lot of cuts that have happened recently to education, and that by funding lower class size now, we really will be setting our students up for success and hopefully refilling and having a fully funded education. So thank you for your question.
Alexander?
Yeah. I seek provision for children explain to you why. American college student, number one stupid student in the whole world. You know, so this don't matter how many people.
Question? Which
Question
question?
very simple. Why is this political game? About this $1 billion, it's not money, people dying around, you know, senior citizens dying. It's not time right now for this political bullshit. Do you understand this?
What's the question?
It's a question.
It's not a question. What's the question?
Oh, it's not a question?
Not a question.
Oh, I need
It was a statement. What's the question?
Okay, I need another question.
So just, does anybody else have a question?
We're learning how to ask questions in my classes,
Joel?
actually.
Yeah, well, that would probably be useful.
$1 billion is, what is it, like $10?
Joel?
I wonder if you can refer me or anybody who's interested as myself. Has anybody found, say, a dozen really good teachers who have been shown or believed to be really outstanding, and have them work a varied number of students in the classroom? That is, it seems obvious that reducing at first glance, reducing the number is a good idea. But I don't believe that's so simple. And I don't know for sure. I just think we're in it's a very messy business. It's how do we go forward with education? But don't you think there's a study that shows 24 really is a lot better, say, in a class?
I got the question.
Effective teaching than 35.
So Joel was asking what are the studies to support for, a given quality of teacher that having 24 students or 17 students or 35 students is better.
Thank you. Thank you. Great question. So there are several studies. You can go onto a website, Class Size Counts, and there's tons of studies there that show that lower class size is affiliated with all ranges of success, be it like younger grades, or it's also tied to lifelong success, many different ways. But what I can tell you as a middle school teacher, that my colleagues are there until 7 o'clock at night. You can drive by my school. And the reason why is because we're differentiating our instruction, and that's our students' right to receive appropriate instruction. So we have students with IEPs in our classrooms. We have students with, 3, 4, 5 different languages in that classroom. And so yes, teachers that are distinguished, teachers that have been in the field for 30 years, teachers that are distinguished that have been in the field for 5 years, it takes a long time, and it is heartbreaking to not be able to reach those students with different languages and different abilities. And so lowering class size is shown wide accounts to increase the quality of educations that all our students receive and to reach each child and build the relationship with each child that they deserve.
Thank you very much. All right, United States Congress, House of Representatives, District 7 is up next. Jim McDermott.
To start.
Yeah, get out of the bright light.
Good evening, I'm Jim McDermott. I'm here to ask you for your vote. Being a representative in Washington, D.C. is a high honor that you give me. You give me your trust to go there and represent you on a wide range of issues. And it is not something I take lightly. We are facing in this country a number of problems. The Congress most recently has not been functioning as it used to, and I'm disappointed with it, angry actually, because I think that the society has to invest. If a society is going to exist, it has to invest in the future. You've heard these things about schools and about teachers. That's about investing in the future of the human beings. We also have to invest in the infrastructure in this country, but we've not been doing that. People have said we can have everything we want, we don't have to pay any taxes. Well, that's simply not true. Somebody's got to say that, and we have to pay for what it is that we want in the society, and it is really what is tying us up. Now, what is even worse right now is that we are enmeshed in a war. It's a war on terror. Now, what in the world that is, I have really no idea. We have gotten ourselves enmeshed in Iraq and Afghanistan, and now we're looking at whether we're going to go into Syria or back into Iraq. The president has been very, very careful in not rushing in. I think our entry into Iraq in the first place by Mr. Bush was done very impulsively. It wasn't thought through what was going on and what was going to be the result of that. That's why we're 11 years and we have got no resolution. And so the president is now struggling with this issue. I'm one of those who believes that negotiation is the way to get out of this. We have got to get the Turks and the Syrians and the Iranians and the Saudis, all the countries that are around that area, have got to get involved with their troops on the ground. We're not going to solve this from 40,000 feet shooting missiles all over the place. That is not going to resolve it. What we're going to do is spend a whole lot of money. Now, all the debt that we have today has been debt that accumulated by the Iraq War and the Afghan War, and we absolutely cannot get ourselves further in debt when we have the problems in this country. The other reason I am going back to Congress is I want to finish health care. We started it. It's not perfect. I will 1 second say it's perfect, but it needs to be actually worked on and made to work better. If you don't believe that, look at the Roosevelt shows that have been on about the start of Social Security and Medicare and all the other things. These things take time, and I want to be there to make it happen.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Craig Keller. I'm a 24-year resident of West Seattle. I like to think I'm just like you. I'm not one that's been earning $170,000. I was shocked. I meant my filing fee was $1,700 to run. So you'd find me this last weekend getting the last bit of painting done on my deck, putting a tent over my heirloom tomatoes that I got started too late on, so they're not turning colors. But anyway, and fixing my 24-year Volkswagen. So I consider myself a citizen legislator. I've been active the last 7 years sponsoring a statewide citizen initiative we call Respect for Law. It would require that our State Department of Licensing verify U.S. lawful presence before issuing driver's license. There are now 350,000 driver's licenses that have been issued to people that haven't proven their lawful presence in this state. That's an issue when you just talk about the economy and protecting our local workers, or it can be a national security issue, or 9/11, not ours for sure. The 9/11 terrorists, they had between the 19 of them, they had 31 different state driver's licenses among them. That's what allowed them to get on the airplanes and do what they did. And our state is the worst among all of them. Most of the states have reformed themselves and gone away from that. Also, very importantly, require all employers to enroll in E-Verify, which is the federal system that all of us pay for now, that just requires or checks and makes sure people aren't using stolen, fraudulent Social Security numbers when they obtain employment in this state. And one of the reasons why, it's not just all about dollars, but I encourage you to go to the website for the campaign, kellerforamerica.us, and that is numeral 4. There's a study here you can download that gives a pretty good estimation of $2.7 billion being spent on the illegal alien population in the state. Now that's dollars, it's a big money. I saw a surprise there. It's big money, so take a look at that. $1.5 billion in education. A lot of it's talked about education tonight. It's a huge number, and it's a matter of people, and it's a matter of certain politicians have created a sanctuary environment and drawn these people here. It's unsustainable. We can't do it. We also deal with immigration. There's this corruption between corporate America, the AFL-CIO, and the Chamber of Commerce with this current bill in the Senate, which massively ups the H-1B foreign workers. Now, former Senator Walter Mondale said it's inexcusable to let these people stay here. For example, we have now 50 Liberian-trained doctors working in the United States. They need to be in their country. We cannot steal that talent from them from these other countries, and we have to protect our own local labor force. Thank you.
I would just respond to this. How many of you came from immigrant stock? Every single one of us. And to blame the problems of the United States on immigration is simply nonsense. And it's further nonsense because the Republican Party in the Senate worked on a compromise with the Democrats, and they sent it over to the House, and the House of Representatives refused to bring it up. They would not bring it up to be discussed and to come to a compromise. And my colleague says he's going to get right in there with the Republicans. They are the ones that stopped this from happening. This bill could pass, the Senate bill could pass in 30 seconds if John Boehner would walk over and say to Nancy Pelosi, I need 100 votes. What do you need? And she would say, we need this and this and this put in it, and the bill would pass. It is possible. What is missing in the Congress is compromise. No one knows everything. No one is always right. No one gets their way all the time.
You can rely upon me to reject corrupt Republicans and corrupt Democrats. That Senate bill was a corrupt, I don't know what you want to say, it's a corrupt thing that should never pass. If you want to protect American workers, I invite you to vote for me, Craig Keller, because one of my #1 goals will be enactment of mandatory E-Verify. There's absolutely no excuse. We have companies, Starbucks, Boeing, Costco, they use E-Verify, but it's voluntary. We have to have everyone to comply with our laws. My campaign is dedicated to the proposition that Americans, every one of you in this audience, want your employment and immigration law enforced. And we can't afford not to do it. So yes, you have a choice. You have a definite choice. And I think the country and it becomes a national security problem. This illegal alien that came into Texas, he came under false pretenses. He was coming to marry and stay permanently. And so we've got a real national security problem as well as a labor problem. You can count on me. Thank you.
Questions? Here?
Okay, question for Mr. Keller.
It goes to both of them, so.
Okay. My concern has been growing over the campaign season about dark money. And my understanding of the definition of that is where, because of Citizens United, a lot of wealthy people have been able to contribute to PACs and such. And then what happens is, it seems to me, is that a lot of attack ads that in many ways are lies. The question is, if you were to go to Congress, how would you mitigate the effect of dark money?
1 minute.
Not take that much. You know, let's go to this immigration bill. Like I say, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the AFL-CIO are in bed on this. And we have local companies. Of course, we had a big issue on minimum wage here in Seattle. I'll put this all together. McDonald's refuses to enroll in E-Verify. They hire lots of illegal aliens.
The question is, what are you going to do?
I understand. I'm getting to it, David. And so I have absolutely no sympathy for corporate America that are using illegal aliens to pay workers lower and forcing other workers to be paid lower too. So now corporate America, that's where a lot of all that, and organized labor, where a lot of that money comes from. I am big for standing for the First Amendment and the Second Amendment too. And so that's very important. I don't know if there's an easy answer, but I'll tell you what, I won't be accommodating the wishes of corrupt corporate America and corrupt labor America, which perhaps my opponent will, but I will not. Thank you.
The effect of money in politics is probably the most corrosive thing there is. For any candidate to have to raise $3 or $4 or $5 million to become a congressman, I don't have to do that in this district. I've been lucky. People have been supporting me for a long time. But many candidates raise $3 and $4 or $5 million. You cannot take $5,000 or $10,000 from somebody and then not expect something back in return. And if you raise $3 million and you get 10 million, 10,000, 10,000, 10,000, 10,000, then you are owned by the people who bought you. And that's one of the problems in Washington right now. I think we should have publicly funded elections in which you give television time, and Mr. Keller and I can stand on television and make our plans known and let people make a choice. Today, you don't have a choice, because if I have enough money, you'll never hear of him.
Back here. Yeah, primarily directed at Congressman McDermott. So you talked about the Congress in terms of no longer being able to compromise and get things done. So no one is predicting that the Democrats will take over the House, the Senate's still in play. We have a Congress, when President Obama was elected, McBoyer and McConnell said their number one goal was to make sure our president fails. What do you realistically expect our Congress to get done in 2 years, where we're still waiting on comprehensive immigration reform, not some of the stuff, I don't know what Mr. Keller is talking about.
Obviously.
We're still waiting for the DREAM Act to pass. We're still waiting for Congress to act on minimum wage. The Republican House votes on repealing the Affordable Care Act every week. So what can we expect to be done in the next 2 years? Realistically.
Let me give you a two-part answer to that. I said to some of my colleagues after the $15 minimum wage passed at CTAC, all the members are coming up to me saying, what the hell's going on in Washington State? I said, the people are tired of waiting for us to do something, and they're starting to do it themselves. You're going to see another thing happen on Election Day when we do something about gun control. In this city, again, it will be the city of Seattle that put on the gun control things, on gun fairs and so forth, background checks, that the rest of the Congress can't do. The other thing that's going to happen, let's just take the worst scenario. The Republicans take the House, they take the Senate, and the President is sitting there trying to deal with them. The Republicans will have no one to blame but themselves if they don't do anything. And if they want to go into the 2016 election having done nothing, as they did for the last two, that's not a winning selection in 2016.
I have a question.
Well, sir, you mentioned a lot of things that I certainly won't support because they reward lawlessness and they reward corruption. In this state, the $15, it's just, the irony is so rich with McDonald's not involving themselves in E-Verify and then being protested by illegal aliens that also want to eliminate E-Verify. I mean, it's on video. It's absurd. Also, let me get back to this about the dollars. Every race we talked about tonight, it's about dollars. So it's about population. So we have to figure this out. There are now almost 1,000 illegal aliens in our state DOC. That doesn't count the number in our county jails that all these judges are dealing with. That's costing a lot of money, $35,000 each a year. And Michael Wang, the PATH photographer that was run over by an illegal alien, one of these driver's license holders, he had 3 different cases, the last of which was in Greenwood and 105th. He crashed into a store, ran off, parked his car, called the police, said, oh, this wasn't my car, and just lied. And now the guy's out for deportation, as he should be. Quality life is important. It's not just dollars. That's why you need someone reliable in Congress.
So I think both of you have mentioned protecting working people and the rights of working people. In 1947, the Taft-Hartley law was passed, and it restricted what unions could do. So I'd like to ask both of you, would you vote to repeal the Taft-Hartley Act?
Well, I don't know all the details about it, but I certainly support organization on the work site. And even more than that, I support American workers. And like I say, you've got a lot of union managements that have betrayed the rank and file members, whether they be carpenters, labor unions, laborers here locally, There's so many examples. And so, and also, you know, the folks that work for Boeing, you know, we do not want, and you can rely on me again. It's about whether you trust me to support you. You can trust me that I will not increase the H-1B visa workers like the bill that my opponent would like to see passed in the House. I'm glad they didn't pass it in the House, because I don't want to see H-1Bs doubled and tripled, whatever. There's almost no limit on that. So I'm not going to abide by that. So you can count on me to support the American worker, whether they're organized or they're not. So you can count on me for their support.
Legislation of the United States is always a compromise. The Taft-Hartley law was a compromise. Not anybody got exactly what they wanted. Labor didn't get what they wanted, businesses didn't get what they wanted. What you need to do is keep amending the law and changing it so that it deals with the problems. We had a bill proposed 2 years ago called ENDA, which is really a law to give workers the right to organize and meet. And gradually, because of the way the appointments have been made to the Labor Relations Act, Labor's Relations Board, workers have lost their rights increasingly to organize. And that's why in this city, when I started in politics, 30% was organized labor in this town. We're down to about 11% now. That's because we have been going after the working man and woman, and it should end. I believe that the power should be given back to the workers as it was by Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the Wagner Act in 1935.
Last question. Hi, yeah, first of all, Congressman McDermott, thank you for coming, and Mr. Keller, thank you for running against a well-established congressman that I think is important that he faces opposition.
My privilege.
My question kind of touches on a couple things you mentioned, but I'll ask it most directly. The New York Times this morning had an article on the front page about water scarcity in the West, and it seems to me that the environment in general has taken quite a back seat, great disappointment to myself and Mr. Obama's administration. So I'd like to know what, if anything, is happening in Congress right now to look at some pretty significant issues such as running out of water.
Unfortunately, the answer is nothing. One of the issues, you're raising one of the biggest issues that faces us on the planet is water. Water is going to be the source of warfare. It's not going to be oil we fight over. It's going to be water, because you cannot live without water. If you look, you can put your finger on the globe anywhere you want. Put it on Iraq. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers arise in Turkey. Turkey's blocking the rivers, cutting off the water to the farmers of Iraq. That's happening. You look in California, where we subsidize people to raise rice in the desert. We're paying for water to go out there when the people of the cities don't have enough water. There are going to have to be some changes in our water laws, but water rights are among the most, they're really awfully hard fought in legislatures. I was in our legislature when we tried it, and you can't find an issue that's more touchy than taking away somebody's right to water. It's going to be a real fight in this country.
Well, I like that question, because I've studied a little bit Columbia Basin Project, the Grand Coulee Dam. I mean, our state, we are so blessed in the state for having all the rain and the Columbia River. And there's opportunity there on the federal level to work on even a more developed Columbia Basin project. So we can do that and benefit our state. Every state's a little bit different. California's got its problems. They've got reverse osmosis plants in Santa Barbara. That's what a lot of countries in the Middle East have had to go to. So there has to be a healthy economic environment to allow that for that to be affordable for those areas. Again, we're blessed here to have extremely low utility rates and to have a municipal utility that hopefully keeps those rates low for us. So worldwide, yeah, it's a problem, but technology is the answer to a lot of that, and I think that's why you need a healthy economy, and you need healthy research budgets including, not high capital gains tax. And we've heard capital gains tonight, but that's not going to improve technology. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you both. Seattle Transportation Benefit District Proposition 1, which is Metro bus service. We didn't have any responses from the no campaign, so yes, Rob Johnson, you have 3 minutes, then we'll take some Q&A.
Hi, I'm going to do the thing where I hand stuff out so you've got something to look at while you ignore what I'm saying. So, as you may have heard tonight, there are 4 Proposition 1s on the ballot. We are the last one, and so we like to say we're a top priority on the bottom of your ballot. So, what is Transportation Proposition 1? It is a car tab and sales tax to pay for bus service here within the city of Seattle. It's a Seattle-only, transit-only measure to improve and expand bus service here in the fastest-growing city in the United States. The document that you've got in front of you, or you will be getting in front of you in a minute, lists all the bus routes that are planned to be improved and expanded as a result of this measure. We've got broad support from business community, labor community, environmental community. You see that the no side did not respond because there is no organized opposition. When you get your voter's guide this week, you will not see a no statement in the voter's pamphlet because we don't have any organized opposition. It's a campaign that not only will provide more funding for bus service, but does a couple of really important things as well. It puts about $3 million a year into a regional fund to match other cities that want to expand bus service here in King County. So cities like Renton, Tukwila, Mercer Island, Shoreline have talked about expanding bus service. This would allow the city of Seattle to partner with those cities to expand bus service that connects Seattle to other parts of the region. It also puts up to $2 million a year into access for low-income bus riders here in the city of Seattle. And then finally, it offers a $20 car tab rebate to low-income folks making less than 200% of AMI, which is in the Seattle region, a family of 4 who makes less than about $45,000 a year, or an individual who makes less than $24,000 a year or so will be eligible for the low-income rebate. So with that, I've got 1 minute remaining, but I'm going to cede that minute and take more questions if you might have them.
I'm going to start off with the first question. When this was originally designed, it was to save more cuts coming from Metro, and if you've been reading the paper, those more cuts may or may are likely not going to happen. So for my question, I'm going to assume that for right now. So my question is, so now we have a list of routes that you just handed out. Where did these list of routes come from, and how does that work under the authorizing legislation about where the money can go?
Great, that's a great question. Yeah, as you alluded to, David, when we first started this process in May, June, July, the assumption was that King County Metro was going to be cutting bus service. King County has found some money. It's a little bit of a risky financial scenario that they're undertaking, but it looks as though those cuts that were planned for 2015 are no longer on the table. So what it gives us is a great opportunity to expand bus service here in the fastest growing city in the United States. So the detailed question about where these routes came from, the city of Seattle has been purchasing bus hours from King County Metro since 2006 when we passed the Bridging the Gap transportation levy. So the city's been working in concert with Metro for the kinds of routes that we would want to invest in should additional money become available. It's not routes that are pulled out of thin air. It's part of a long developed plan that the city's had in working with Metro about the kind of priority routes they'd want to invest in.
Next question.
Yeah,
It's really hard to take all these questions at once, please.
Alexander, question? And then we'll go over here. Yeah?
Okay. It's absolutely stupid idea because twice is rejected for people. It's not a point. Point, so $50 million we spend for 450 management. $50 million. It's $100,000 for management. Absolutely. In each transportation for road that we have. It's $50 million to pay for something, but these people are not doing nothing. It's a simple joke.
So question.
We cut for 80%. My question is very simple. Or even also 80% is job, but this management make, you know what this means? It's ordinary job, you go year by year by year, we can cut this by $50 million. Easy. Why is this bullshit again, third time?
So I think that question was about, can we cut metro management in order to facilitate the increase in bus service?
Yeah.
I think that was the question. I'm going to do my best to answer it. So Metro has found efficiencies within the system, which has helped lead to the saving off of cuts in 2015. Part of that is layoffs and through attrition at the management level. Part of it is savings through expected lower than expected diesel prices. Another part of it is through management of Metro's reserve assumptions. So there's additional revenue that they found. That some of it comes from labor, some of it comes from operations, and some of it comes from capital in order to get us into this situation we're in. Yeah.
There has been talk in the media, if this passes, then the state will fund less. So how do you counter on that idea?
Right, so our transit system is funded almost exclusively through local sources. Very little money for King County Metro comes from the state. It's less than 2%. So I don't see how they could do much less. Luckily here.
So let me redirect the question to why won't Metro just spend money outside of Seattle, since we're going to be putting money in and we don't get any further?
Okay, I'm going to keep answering that one, and then I'll answer yours. So we're lucky here in the 46th that we've got some really great state legislators that are fighting for more revenue for transit service in Olympia. Justin Farrell's a huge champion on this issue as the vice chair of the House Transportation Committee. This doesn't dampen, I think, regional enthusiasm to go down to Olympia and try to fight for more bus service. This is a 6-year measure, so it expires in 2020. The plan is to keep going down to Olympia, fighting with other cities in King County to try to find a more stable long-term revenue source for Olympia. So then the second part of that question is, what can the city do to protect itself against making sure that the city's money isn't going to subsidize bus service outside the city of Seattle? So if the measure passes on November 4th, the city's going to enter into an interlocal agreement with King County Metro, and it's going to sign, that interlocal agreement is going to have 2 key components to it. One, it's going to set a floor for the existing service that we have now. Let's pretend that that number is 500,000 service hours. These aren't exact numbers, but give or take. It's about 500,000 hours. We want to buy another 250,000 hours. So that agreement's going to say, for the next several years, you're going to guarantee us that we're going to continue to get the same level of service that we get today, and in addition, we're going to be buying this number of service above and beyond.
Then here, we'll take this as the last one.
I can project. You're asking for a lot of money. This may seem irrelevant, but bear with me. Healthcare is expensive. We all pay for our own healthcare through our employer, however else. My understanding is that King County Metro employees get their healthcare almost free. Can you address that?
I don't know the intricacies of King County's labor practices, so unfortunately I can't. I run a nonprofit called Transportation Choices Coalition. I'm one of the co-chairs of the committee. So I've been working on this issue for 10 years. This is the first time I've had anybody ask me that question, so I don't have a good answer for you. I'm sorry.
Interesting.
But again, thank you for letting me come speak tonight. Top priority at the bottom of your ballot. We hope you go yes.
We are running over, but we're going to give Jerry a couple minutes to talk, and then we'll go into the land use stuff, and then we'll close out.
Thank you for making time, and thank you very much for holding a candidates forum. Believe it or not, this is only the third, and that there are no others. Candidate forums other than the 46th District Democrats candidate forum. But in terms of any bipartisan candidate forums, the League of Women Voters held one with Julianne moderating, and we had Howler Lake Community Council, and we have this. And that is it for any opportunity for candidates to appear before community groups in the entire 46th District this season. So thank you very much. 3 years ago, I became your state representative. I made a commitment to you that I would be working to make sure that every child has the opportunity to succeed in school and have the education they need to succeed in life, to have the health care and dignity for every resident that every resident in the state deserves, to make sure that our environment is healthier tomorrow than we have it today, and to fight climate change. And to make our tax system more fair and able to provide the revenues we need for every child to be able to have that education, for every person, whether they have mental illness or they're 85 years old, to have dignity and health care in this state. Our state has the most regressive tax system in the entire country. A working person, a retiree, person who is homeless, pays more in state and local taxes in this state than if they lived anywhere else in the nation, but we are one of the wealthiest states in the country, and we are 47th in providing for our children's classrooms. We are 49th in the country in providing for higher education. Over the past 3 years, I've been honored by different organizations being named Legislator of the Year 5 times. 3 of them are for working to increase the opportunity for every child and every person in this state to have access to higher education, to protect consumers, and to work for openness in government. We've got a lot of work to do in order to pay for education, as we were talking about earlier today. But we have to make that commitment that we can lower class sizes for every child. We know it works, and I really appreciate your speaking up. And we need to do this for every child. We are leaving behind the 20% of children who have disabilities. We cannot focus and simply standardize test our children and think that we're going to not increase the graduation dropout rate instead of increasing graduation rates. My time's up. I'm glad to take your questions.
Anybody got questions?
So, what is your vision? We're going to need more tax revenue to solve one of these problems. What would you do if you were the dictator and you could change it tomorrow? What would you do?
I was counting on that question. So the question is, what would I do to provide that revenue that we need? Is that, okay. First and foremost, in the long haul, we need to have an income tax in the state of Washington. To get there, I believe that we need to start with a capital gains tax. About a dozen years ago, how many of you work for Microsoft? I'm shocked. No one? Okay. Well, when Microsoft was sitting on the largest mountain of cash in the history of the world, they won an exemption from our tax system for paying any B&O tax, business tax, on any profits earned by investing in Wall Street. No corporation pays any profits, any taxes on their profits from investments. That means they invest in Wall Street instead of Main Street. That costs us $1 billion. That's what we need for closing the gap and paying for our children's education, lower class sizes. We can do this not just by making the tax system more fair and easing off of sales tax, but by also easing off of local levies for school levies. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All right.
And I
So,
did hand out an announcement. Please come to that public meeting on Tuesday if you care about Magnuson Park. I hand it out.
perfect. Thanks, Jerry.